All righty. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome, everyone. My name is Ray Thompson, and I am the Director of Product Marketing here at Avid for all things video and video post. And I want to welcome you all to Avid's Studio webinar series, Into the Cloud. This is a series of webinars that we'll be presenting, 6 of them in particular, where we're going to start digging into some of the technologies that are being explored by the different studios as they migrate different parts of the workflow into the cloud. And so we've partnered with several Avid partners to present these webinars, and they will be happening every week for the next 4 weeks. And then we'll do a few sessions at the beginning of the year to kick off the year as well. And the idea of the series is really to kind of go a level deeper than we have been in a lot of the webinars we've already done, either as Avid or with Microsoft. And like I said, to sort of explore some of the sort of technologies that people are starting to sort of use as they migrate to the cloud. But to tee it all off, what made sense was to talk about at the high level some of the trends that we're seeing being adopted in the market. And certainly a lot has happened this year. And so we're really excited to have Jeff Rosica, CEO and President of Avid Technology, with us today, along with Hanno Bassi, who's the CTO of Microsoft Azure and their media and entertainment divisions. So I want to thank you both for being here today. And before we begin, I just want to do some logistics real quick. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A function inside of the Zoom. Anybody participating on any social media platforms, feel free to answer a question there. We will be recording this, of course, and we will be sharing the recording once it's complete, and we will also answer any questions that come in either from the Zoom or from social platforms, and we'll publish all that with the session once it's done. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And again, Jeff and Hanno, welcome and thank you. So let's kick it off. In terms of some of the current trends that you were both seeing, Microsoft and Avid, in terms of studios and their migration to the cloud, what are some of the things you're both seeing? Hanno, why don't you begin?
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. First of all, for the great introduction. It's great to be here and be talking to my longtime friend, actually, Jeff Rosica here. Great to be together with you guys. And also thank you for the partnership with Microsoft. I think it's been great over the last 3+ years. So we're really happy to be here. When it comes to current trends in the industry, I think it's probably pretty well known now that we're a little bit in a crisis mode right now, which has really forced a lot of productions and media companies in general to rethink how they work. And obviously, working remotely is the name of the game now. But it's not just in post-production and in office jobs, but it's also as you re-enable production workflows, from set. How do you actually enable that, and how do you make that work with having less people on set, but then also providing remote access to the content that gets captured there? How do you make it available quickly and in a robust and secure manner? And we think that the cloud technology actually really helps address some of these immediate concerns here, and we're working with the industry on that. And then so we're clearly seeing a lot of demand around SaaS and PaaS, so software as a service and platform as a service offerings, because you want to make it easier and straightforward for your creative artists to use this technology. So they shouldn't be worried about where the content is and what the technology stack is. We need to enable them to work on the creative process and create the art and stories that we all love. And last, I just want to say there's also really interesting trends emerging here with virtual production. The Mandalorian season 1 that came out last year was a great example of that, and I think we're going to see more and more of that going forward as you want to be more independent of the locations that you shoot, and also just reduce the number of people on set going forward.
That's great. That's a great show too. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, hi, Ray. Well, first of all, again, thanks for joining in. Hano, good to see you. I know Hano and I have known each other way too long, but it's good to be always good to be on a session like this with you. I won't tip a lot into the COVID. I think we're going to talk about COVID. I know, Ray, you've got that question teed up to talk to us, but I think if you really look at what's going on, the trends we were seeing, as Hano said, the relationship with Microsoft as an example, and our own cloud strategy started around 3 years ago. We already saw that cloud was going to really, I think, change the way we create content and the way we manage content, the way we deliver content as an industry. And so we could see already that this was going to be a pretty important trend for the industry. I think if you look at again, putting COVID aside for a moment, if you look at the macro thing that's going on, is obviously the move to direct to consumer and the on-demand platforms. That is changing really the business models. I think we still have our traditional business models around broadcast television and theatrical film release, but I think the DTC models and the direct to consumer models have really changed a lot of what we're doing as an industry, because it's even changed the very models. I mean, even the fact that people drop a whole season in some cases all at once, or even the length of seasons have changed, and they're 8 and 10 episodes, not 20 something episodes. And I think the speed by which these models require new content and the appetite for new content has increased. So I think that in itself is really driving a lot of change in our industry and how we're going to have to create content. We obviously have to create more content faster, more efficiently, and that's cloud is really going to give us a lot of flexibility as an industry to enable this. And as a technology supplier, it allows us to solve our customers' problems in the studios in really more powerful ways and in more interesting ways than we were able to before as a provider and as an industry. And I think, when you look at, I'll spin a little bit into COVID. COVID, I think, accelerated things a bit, because I think people were already looking at how do we enable distributed workforces? How do we enable remote collaboration no matter where somebody is? Can we leverage more geography, which of course as an industry was already pretty vibrant. But I think that what maybe COVID taught us is that we really can rely on these things even more, that we can get people to collaborate in different ways remotely. We can leverage workforces around the world at home. They don't just have to be sitting in the studio or in the production environment. And so I think the industry definitely is changing a lot from this. And I think we're just getting started as an industry on how that's going to change the workflows for studios.
That's a good point. I think even before COVID, right, the industry was really experiencing significant shifts, all based on consumer demand for content delivered on any device, anywhere, anytime. And of course, that's had operational and economic impacts across the board, really, regardless of what you do, right, post or broadcast news, sports, right? It really doesn't matter. The impact has been significant. And then once the pandemic hit, like you said, Jeff, it really changed quite a bit. So Hannah, from the pandemic perspective, right? How do you think that has changed people's attitudes as it relates to migrating workflows into the cloud?
Yeah, so like you guys just said, the discussion around cloud production and what would it mean and why would you want to go there has been around the industry for quite a while, for several years, right? Until last year, I was the CTO at 20th Century Fox and was part of that group, with the other studio CTOs discussing, what this means and what we want to do, and which culminated in the pretty famous now Movie Labs white paper, production in the cloud, the evolution of content production and what it means, and what it looks like in 2030. That was the original kind of idea there. But like Satya Nadella, our CEO, said this earlier this year, that what the pandemic really did was compress timelines quite a bit. So things that we thought we had time to do in the next 2 to 3 years, all of a sudden we had to do in the next 2 to 3 months. And we're really seeing that. So before then, we've had multiple partnerships in the studio space, for example. And when people are talking about the cloud, there was a lot around, content storage, backup, archiving, that sort of thing, and not necessarily, hands-on real-time production workflows. And then, as COVID-19 hit, obviously that totally changed in a matter of a couple of weeks. I joined Microsoft in March of this year. Right at the peak of when that happened.
That's right.
My first 6 weeks at Microsoft were basically consumed with, okay, how do we pivot? How do we actually enable enable all this and literally do it overnight. And so, but I think what that eventually brought out is now artists and also studio executives, as I would say, especially in the production space, are more comfortable with cloud technology than they were a few months ago. The concern that we would constantly lose content, that's not really the case. Also, in a lot of creatives' minds, the cloud is like the internet. So, with rampant, piracy and content theft and what have you. But people are starting to realize that the cloud is not that. It's actually the opposite. It's very, very secure, very solid. And then also, even from a let's say latency standpoint, especially our collaboration here with Avid, we're clearly seeing that latency is much less of an issue than people had feared. I mean, we have multiple joint projects here, feature films as well as episodic TV shows that are being edited on Azure using Avid Media Composer, and it's working quite well. I mean, I've seen firsthand what the editing process looks like, and it's totally doable. Even, people do this from home just with their, cable modem access over the public internet, and it works and it's secure.
That's great. I mean, I think that's totally true. I think that's a lot of what we've seen too as well. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as Hanno said, and all great points. I think Hanno's, spot on, of course. Hanno's one of the most knowledgeable people in our industry, but clearly that, I think obviously, remote collaboration and people being able to work from anywhere. I mean, those things obviously were proven out. I think what I would add though, is that I think also what our industry, and I won't just speak to studios. I think it really was, I'm really speaking to more our entire industry as a media and broadcast industry or media and entertainment industry. Look, I think we were caught out, to be honest. I think that, and I'm someone who's spent my whole career in my industry. So if I'm going to put this criticism on our industry, I'll put it on myself too, is that, we weren't ready for this. I mean, as an industry, we didn't have the right business continuity plans. We didn't have the right disaster recovery. We didn't have, the right flexibility in our infrastructures and in our workflows to be able to adapt to what was happening as an industry. And so I think a lot of, if I can say, C-suites around broadcast media companies and quite frankly, technology companies probably have had some pretty serious discussions around how to not get caught out like this again. So I think that the industry in one way has learned that, and I agree with the point you made, Hanno, is, timelines have compressed. I mean, they've gone to a fraction of what they were, like you said. I mean, something that we probably as an industry would have taken 2 years to do, we did in 2 weeks. Or maybe 10 years, we did in 2 weeks. So we've all learned to compress timelines, or at least compress our expectations of what we got to get done when. But I think that people have really learned a lot about just making sure their businesses are more nimble and more flexible and are more hardened in how to deal with anything that may occur in the world or in their business. So I think it's taught us all a lot, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's good for our industry. And it's probably definitely accelerated the adoption of cloud or virtualized workflows for sure.
That's great. I mean, one of the big concerns, of course, always when discussing cloud and migrating any workflow to the cloud, really regardless of what it is around security. So Jeff, have you seen any change in attitudes as it relates specifically to security concerns, even before the pandemic, and then thinking about it now, right? Some of those attitudes, and have they changed, evolved at all?
Yeah, I think, they were changing pretty slowly, and I have to give kudos to the Disney Studios organization, the Walt Disney Studios organization. When we, together with Walt Disney Studios and Microsoft, announced back, I think it was September of 2019, before all this came at us, the fact that even Walt Disney Studios talked about how they were, piloting workflows for studio production and different workflows, archive, backup, or production continuity and editorial, all these things were being worked through. I think that really resonated for the industry, because I think the industry said, wow, if someone like the Disney organization is getting comfortable with these technologies, especially around security of media and content and systems, I think it woke a lot of people up. I got to say, I've probably heard 20, 30 people personally tell me in the industry, boy, if they're doing it, then maybe we got to take it more seriously. So I think as people, and then they were one of the first that really went public, I think more have come forward since then. But I think as people see others in the industry, especially, very sophisticated studio organizations, embrace these technologies and really go forward with, bringing live productions and very high value productions into the cloud, I think it gets people's concerns down. And I think so. I think that security was always a topic. It still is for some people. I think people are learning pretty quickly that, to be honest, these environments that, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to any one of the, the industry media companies or broadcasters, but the tools that people like Microsoft put in place to secure these data centers and to watch traffic and to watch connections, we as an industry and probably any sophisticated broadcaster media company or studio can't really, build the kind of infrastructure and capability that someone like a Microsoft or others who build cloud environments, what they do. So I think there should be a real inherent feeling of security in that alone. Now, I know that's not all of it. You got to protect every connection to the cloud, including that in the field. But I think that there's really a lot there. And then for us as a company, we've done a lot of work qualifying all of our tools and integrating Nexus into the Azure stack and really getting the benefits of that Azure platform that really has inherent security in it. And all the ecosystem of partners we've built, et cetera. And even the work we're doing with our customers to really certify our solutions to be safe and secure in the cloud or in remote environments has really, I think it's been a lot of work, but it's also shown us that this stuff is really secure and very stable.
That's great. Hanno, what about you? What have you seen in terms of attitudes and their sort of evolving around this topic?
Yeah, I think it's clearly, changing. I think in the studio technology community, by the way, I think that was has been less of a concern for years, but I think more in the creative community, we've seen, more concerns there. And like I said earlier, I think that is clearly changing. And like Jeff just said, there's a number of different, certification processes and protocols that we go through that we, obviously pass with flying colors. I mean, and I think this is not even unique to Microsoft. I mean, all hyperscale cloud providers need to have rock solid security. Otherwise, we wouldn't actually be in business. I mean, we support customers in financial services, banks, with individual, customers as, financial information there. We support healthcare. We support the government, with the JEDI contract and so on and so forth. And so security is kind of really built in from the ground up into cloud technology. And by the way, in a lot of ways, it's I believe that, and I've actually believed this even before I worked for Microsoft, is that overall, I think, cloud providers actually have, just because of the sheer scale that they have, they just actually have better capabilities to protect content and defend against, cybersecurity threats than smaller companies do with a smaller footprint and frankly also less resources. And so I think overall, I see us putting that rapidly behind us, that concern actually.
That's great. I mean, that's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think, that allows studios to really focus on creating content and not have to really worry about security, right? Given the amount of resources that are already dedicated to it, right, in the cloud. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I think Ray, the point Hanno made is important. Is I think the studios have gotten very sophisticated with this, and I think have gotten very comfortable with it. I think it's our job, not just as technology suppliers, but probably the studios themselves, to really make sure that the entire creative community is getting comfortable with this, because we still hear it. We don't hear it again from the big media companies or big studios, et cetera, but we still hear it in the creative community. And I think we all have to work together to make sure that that our industry is comfortable with security and safety of these environments and these solutions.
Yeah, and I think this is also going to come just with the experience of working with it. I mean, another concern that we hear is, where's my content? Is it still going to be there? If I send it into the ether, is my editor actually going to see it there? And is it all going to be there? And how do you make sure that everything that got uploaded actually gets the right destination and it's there and then it doesn't get lost? There is a human kind of tactile thing about having an LTO tape in your hand, but again, I think this, which I actually would say is less secure and also more prone for errors and get lost or erased or whatever than actually what we do with cloud technology. But again, that this is, I think, just something that with time will overcome. And as we see more and more production migrating to cloud technology, I think people will just get over that and embrace it, because there's so much so many benefits to working in the cloud, and I think remote collaboration is really the top one here. I mean, every time we talk to a production company, or just a producer, or a VFX supervisor or somebody like that, what they like the most about cloud technology, and they're seeing it firsthand now, is that they can now collaborate with anybody. They can hire their talent from wherever it is. They're not limited by a specific location anymore. And people are embracing this right now, and they will continue to embrace it going forward. And I think at some point that's going to outweigh some of the early concerns that people might have, and especially as people realize that those concerns are not really substantiated by what's going on in reality. So
yeah, I mean, the cloud definitely knocks any geographical concerns down to zero for sure. So I think one of the things that the pandemic has certainly taught the industry is that remote workflows from the cloud are not only possible, but they're actually really good. Jeff, have you found customers giving us that same feedback?
Yeah, for sure. And it was interesting, back to what we were talking about before, Ray, is that, and because you're part of Avid, we've had some remote workflow capabilities in many of our tools for years. Now I'll say we've had to really, invest in them and make them even better and more powerful over the last several months. But yeah, it was interesting that because people had to and they were forced to do it, they deployed these technologies, and they found out that they were quite good. Now, again, we found out also weaknesses, and there's things we're doing to make them even better and more powerful. And there's things that as an industry we have to solve, like over the shoulder. I mean, there are certain things that aren't necessarily technical, but maybe more workflow oriented, or how we're going to solve certain ways of working. But yeah, I think the capability is pretty powerful. And I agree with, I think Hanno made the comment earlier. I was actually early in my career, not for very long, but I was a news editor, and so I know enough to be dangerous. But I looked at our editing capability in cloud, and I tried it, and I was shocked. I mean, even myself, I had that feeling like latency is going to be an issue, and how are we going to get over it? And then when I used the solutions, I tried the solutions myself this summer. It is shocking just how good it is. And I mean, there is a slight difference, but it's not as big as everybody thinks it is.
Yeah. How about you, Hanno? Have you heard the same from customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we have multiple active projects around the industry where people are using it. I think the bigger concern right now that we have is that there's just not enough production going on, right? That there's not enough content being shot for the obvious reasons. Otherwise, I think we would even see more adoption of this now.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard customers say that the experience they have is better than even sitting at their desk in an on-prem facility, because oftentimes the VM running, say, Media Composer is more powerful than what they actually have under their desk. So even in challenging bandwidth conditions, right, they're still having a really positive, good experience.
And by the way,
go ahead.
But that's not just true for editing. That's true for all kinds of workloads.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
In media, content creation. So again, we're going to see a lot more of this as people just get familiar with it.
So Hanno, I'll go to you on this one first. In terms of services and what's possible today, when you think about artificial intelligence or machine learning or content distribution, what are customers saying about sort of leveraging those technologies to improve and sort of automate and orchestrate workflows?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, I mean, this industry obviously has been evolving for the last 100 years, and there's a lot of set ways of doing things. And so we're on the one hand, we're working with our customers to figure out how to take the best of the existing processes and workflows and migrate them over to cloud technology. But as you're doing that, you really want to take advantage of what cloud technology brings you. And so the capability to automate certain things, also through machine learning and AI capabilities, really helps. And it's not just automating a workflow, but it's also, for example, you're on set, you had your gate open for like 8 hours, and there's I don't know, probably 30 minutes of useful content there. How do you curate that quickly so you don't upload a bunch of unusable footage into your editorial environment?
Right.
So we can clearly use AI capabilities, image recognition capabilities for that today. that helps with sound conform, and a bunch of other things. So there's a lot of capabilities there just when it comes to, simple, content preparation for the editor, for example. Okay, which, how do you congregate, or correlate metadata to the things that were shot? How do you optimize actually the communication between the director and the crew on set and the editing team in an edit suite, and maybe they're actually not all sitting together, but the assistant editors and the editing team, they're probably all distributed around their individual homes or offices right now because they can't all work together. And so there's clearly automation capability there to really annotate everything and facilitate communication there. But also just, in general, the stuff that the fact that you can move faster, the dailies are available faster. You can quickly iterate on stuff. If all of a sudden, something goes a little bit in a wrong direction, you can course correct quicker than you used to in the past, right? Because, the content is just available more quicker, and the editor can assemble it quicker, send it back. Oh, this scene doesn't really work. We have to, get more coverage for this particular scene so to actually make it work in the end product. So those decisions are just, enabled in a lot more streamlined and faster way than they used to.
Yeah, Jeff, when I think about some of our tool sets, right, being able to sort of automate like metadata extraction, right, for powerful search, things like that. I mean, those are just some of the things that we can take advantage of, right, in terms of services and sort of automation in the cloud.
Yeah, I think, definitely, Ray. So I think workflows are, again, getting the basic capability, whether it's, for us, editorial in the cloud or other types of workflows in studio workflow in the cloud. It was interesting, though, I want to follow on, it reminded me of an experience I had. Hanno made the comment about some of the workflows. And I recently got the chance, haven't been able to do it very often during COVID, but I recently got the chance to go on set and see a group shooting one evening. And they were doing on-set editorial, but they weren't on set. They were, but they weren't, because the editor was remote at home, and the editor, though, was literally there on the screen and was talking to the director, and they were looking at cuts and looking at how things were looking as they were shooting. And just things, you see things like that, and it was pretty amazing, the workflow they had and how quickly they did it. So I think, we're just scratching the surface as to what's possible in not just editorial, but in the entire production supply chain. So I think, there's amazing things. But to your point, Ray, I think that, obviously leveraging editorial and the surrounding workflows is important. But I think one of the things we've learned is that as we have taken different customers into the cloud, you start realizing there's things you innovate along the way that you realize that whether you're trying to manage your levels of storage or tiers of storage of your content, because people are shooting at such high shoot ratios today in the digital world, how they're managing asset management, how they're, actually innovating the workflows. And we've seen people do amazing production continuity work. We've seen people do follow the sun type of models. And so I think this kind of virtualizing of the technology infrastructure and making it available on a global scale to anybody, anywhere, and how you can rethink how a lot of the workflows work. I think this is going to, as Hanno said, our industry has generally progressed pretty slowly over 100 years. I mean, there's been a lot of great innovation, but we have generally moved at a very set pace, and for good reason. I mean, there's a lot of money on the line, and these are very, very complex things that people do when they create a movie or a TV show, et cetera. But I think that if you look back at this industry, I think the period we're in now is probably going to be the biggest period of innovation. Because I agree. We've really got an opportunity to change the game significantly, and again, in all aspects of the production and the delivery supply chain.
Well, this has been great. We have time, I think, for one more question. And so, Hanno, when you look out ahead, what technologies or inflection points do you see from your perspective that will further, sort of migrate folks into the cloud?
Yeah, I think in the short term, the key piece really is how do we enable content ingest from set into the cloud. You know, if you're shooting on a sound stage today, that's typically not a huge issue. You have typically, high bandwidth access to the internet and meeting back to the cloud. And sometimes we have, or in many cases, actually, we have private line, solutions there to enable that. But I think it's really going to be interesting to see how we can actually also collect content from remote locations, from actual location shots. And you're not obviously always in the middle of New York, for example. And even if you are, the connectivity back to the cloud may also not be perfect. And so for that, I think there's some short-term projects that we're working with our Edge team on to enable, these use cases. So for example, at what point in time are we ready to use 5G technology, for example, to wirelessly, upload content to the nearest access point from where it can go to the cloud? That's one, and I think like we already talked about, AI and machine learning will help drive all kinds of aspects of our industry further. But I think overall production will migrate into the cloud, and once we see not so for example, if you look at end to end, so content ingest from set to cloud, we know how to do that. We know how to deliver that content to editorial. You can do your VFX pulls from there. You can deliver your turnovers back into there today. That all works today, and then hand it off to conform and the DI post production. Those things are all possible in the cloud today. Color grading is maybe a little bit of an issue still, but we're going to get there. And then over time, we just need to be able to get all these other auxiliary workflows, or not auxiliary, but these additional workflows into Azure more broadly, or into the cloud more broadly, visual effects, for example. But again, I think this capability to really kind of natively collaborate around the world on a single project is also going to be super important for things like visual effects, because those are clearly globally distributed teams today. So we're going to see a lot of push that way in the next couple of years. So production in the cloud is it, I think. And also, if you think about it, today, especially a major production, what an infrastructure investment that is every time. Right. All this gear that you have to put on set and in post production. In the future, it's going to be much easier. You just rent it for the time you need it, and then you're done. I think that's what cloud technology enables as well. And so that's also how longer term, I think we're clearly going to get over the hump with the cost issues that we're discussing today.
Jeff, anything you see on the horizon from a tech perspective that sort of will make moving to the cloud even more compelling than it already is?
Well, I mean, Han's right in everything he said. I think 5G is going to be a real helpful piece of technology once it really gets deployed widely around the world, because I think it will open up a lot of in the field, and not just, we're talking about studio workflows today, but for the whole industry, it's going to change a lot. But definitely for studio workflows, even that on-set type of work, even to be able to get proxies back faster as a first step would be a good first step, or dailies back faster. I think that the industry is going to require some type of intelligent edge devices. I think that we're going to have to probably, I know as a technology innovator we're looking at it, but we're really going to have to look at what is required at the edge, what's required, obviously capability in the hyperscale cloud environment. But I think because our industry uses a lot of bandwidth, uses a lot of storage capacity, and needs a lot of processing power, my guess is some innovation around the edge is going to be important too for our industry.
Excellent. Well, I think we're out of time. I think we're a little over, actually. And I want to thank you both for your time. We really appreciate hearing from industry leaders such as yourselves. And of course, Microsoft is, such a great partner for Avid. So thank you so much for today. And just real quick, I'm going to just promote our upcoming session, which is coming up next week. So real quick. We have another session. So episode 2 will be a post-production session that we're going to do with Scott Bounds, who's a media cloud architect at Microsoft, and then Richard Duke, who is a chief solutions architect here at Avid. And we're going to talk about post-production workflows in the cloud and some of the technologies that are driving further innovation there. So I want to invite you all to attend that one. That will be next week at the same time. So thank you very much. And again, thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Hanu. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Hondo. And thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Ray.